introduction, then the relative importance of operating system and what its utility in today and as well as in the past and in the coming future, and some of the other basic functionality. So starting with the objective of this particular class, that why we have this particular class and what are the things that we are going to cover. Then specifically, we are going to start with a very basic introduction of operating system. Why do we need it? And when specifically its requirement come into picture. Additionally, there are multiple capabilities that an operating system has, and specifically depending on the environment, depending on the role of an operating system in a particular context, it performs its duties in a different variety. So starting with the basic definition, then capabilities, we'll move on to the functional architectures. The functional architectures will detail you about that what are the different architectures at functional level that operating systems have and how gradually they have changed over the period of time, depending on the requirements. Then moving forward, we have some common categories of operating system that will introduce us the wide varieties of operating system, their demands over the time, and how specifically they are going to change their role depending on the need. And finally, we are going to discuss some of the basic examples. So moving forward, what is the basic definition of operating system? So not a very big definition, a very specific statement. A system software program means operating system is a system software. Now, specifically, if as we will discuss, that we are going to have a basic understanding of how you understand operating system, how do you specifically imagine the behavior of operating system, then you need to understand the basic definition of system software. What do you mean by a system software? So it's a software that helps to manage a particular kind of system. Now that system might be in the form of laptop, it might be in the form of some iPad, it might be some server, it might be some workstation. So depending on a specific device, its specific operating system is also going to change. But its basic role is to control that particular system. So that's why it's a system software. Now, additionally, we have another category of software that is application software. So when people ask that what is the basic difference? So basic difference lies in their functionality. Whereas the system software is supposed to handle the system in a specific way, depending on its applications and need. And application software is going to work only in a specific way. For example, Microsoft Word is an application software. Its functionality is not going to change if you change the underlying architecture. Means if you are moving from a mobile device to a standalone device or to a fixed device or to an ad hoc network. Means whenever you move, its functionality is not going to change. It is simply used for word processing. But in case of operating system, like in case of system software, if you have a different underlying architecture means the device that you are having, its bit architecture is different, its word processing capacity is different. Means architecture means how the different components of a system have come together to form that particular system. That is architecture. So if the underlying architecture is going to change, then depending on its bit length, its data bus size, its address bus size, and so many other individual components, those are present in the system like registers and memory capacity, and its support to users in terms of single user system and in terms of a multi-user system, its behavior is going to change. So that's why we say that a system software is very particular to the system, but an application software is not a particular kind of software for a specific system. Now we understood the basic definition of operating system and why. So the question of why comes here, and the answer is that it helps to communicate with the machine. So machine communication is very important. When we say that we are communicating to machine, what does it mean? It means that we are talking to a particular hardware that is supposed to be dumb. Means it is not supposed to be intelligent. But now with the evolution of artificial intelligence and machine learning, we are saying that the machines are talking, they are thinking. But in actual, when we think that a particular hardware is there, when we talk about robots, then we imagine that there is used to be, means there is some sort of intelligence inside it. But a robot can also be a dumb machine. Because if the proper operating system is not there, if the suitable operating system and the underlying APIs are not available inside the machine, how will it communicate to other machine? How will it communicate its emotions? How will it convey its intelligence? So all these decisions lies in a very basic thing, that is communication. So whenever we say that we are studying computer science, we are studying operating system, we are studying compiler, we are studying computer architecture, all these things come to a very basic point, that is communication. Because if we don't have a proper communication, then all these things become meaningless. Your artificial intelligence, your emotional intelligence, your underlying powerful architecture, and your so-called very sophisticated operating systems. All these things are of no use if you are not able to communicate in a proper way to the intended destination or the recipient. So in this way, we are going to say that operating system, the fundamental objective is to communicate with the machine hardware. Now, there is, on the other hand side, there is machine hardware. So what is this side? This side is the user or you, or it might be some sort of application software. Because when we say there is an operating system, then operating system is supposed to be a sandwich item between the machine hardware and the application software. So either application software means we are using an application software in terms of MS Office or some Tally or something other kind of operational software, and we are interacting with it, and it is interacting with the operating system, and finally operating system is going to interact with machine. So in this way, it is communicating with the machine in a direct or indirect manner. But ultimately, we are using operating system to have this kind of communication. So communication will be possible with the help of operating system, but inside operating system, it is not just a single piece of software. There are multiple pieces of software. Those are called to be the constituent components. And those components are together are supposed to work in a specific way to make this communication possible. Okay. So moving on, after understanding the basic definition and then why do we need it, we are going to talk about when. Means in what particular situation we need an operating system. So question comes with this question, means when we say that when do we need an operating system? In this case, another question arises that do we actually need an operating system? Because when we say that the operating system is needed, yes, it provides multiple benefits. It provides you so ease of communication and so ease of functionality. But if we don't need it, is it the case? Means is it the possibility out there? Yes, it is the possibility. Because if you know the low level languages, means if you are low level language means what? Low level language means the binary program. Means you are able to program the machine in a very direct fashion. Very direct fashion means very ground level. For example, you come into electronics. So in electronics domain, we don't need any specific operating system. Now, in today's courses, like when we talk about the electronics engineering in today's world, then we do have many microprocessors and we have multiple microcontrollers. They do have some sort of compiler or assembler inside those. Those are some sort of operating system because they ultimately translate your medium level code or high level code, you can say, because many microcontrollers are available out there who are programmed in C or who are programmed in high level languages. Now those high level programs are converted into low level programs and then your machine understands those codes. So if specifically you work at low level, means you can directly program the wires. You can directly program the logic on machine in terms of switches. Then you don't need any specific operating system. But what is the problem? That working at the low level, if you are going to have some sort of basic program, like you want to add two numbers, you want to have some sort of basic multiplication, you want to have some very particular simple sort of matrix computation, then it is very easy. You can do it. But when you want to do a complex task, for example, you want to send a particular item, for example, you want to send a specific vehicle from one way to another, and you need a specific operating system for that particular purpose. Like we have the self-driving cars. These are going to be the reality. So in that particular kind of environment, you are to work in space. So in terms of space communication, in terms of complex artificial or machine level intelligence, then at that particular level, working at low level programming is not possible, because there are so many concepts, there are so many abstractions, those are supposed to be there, and you are supposed to implement all those things at very basic level. So many hardware components, so many logic changes are supposed to happen in a fraction of second. So that's why nowadays you see that the processing capabilities of processors are going high, as well as we need high capacity memories. Why? Because our programs are getting heavier day by day. Because our resolutions, whatever you want to say, means in terms of image processing, our images are getting heavier, our codes are getting voluminous, and day by day, our daily needs are getting expanded. And due to Corona or all these situations, we are coming online. So almost every person is coming online nowadays. So what all these things are doing? All these things are generating data. So when the data is getting generated, obviously there is a situation of big data. If there is a situation of big data, you need powerful softwares, you need powerful operating systems to handle all these things. So in this way, all these things cannot be handled at low level. So that's why we need some sophisticated operating system, some powerful operating system, and we don't have a familiarity with low level language. So obviously it becomes a very obvious need. So moving forward, we are going to discuss some of the capabilities of operating system. Now, in terms of capabilities, when we say that a particular operating system is capable to do that particular thing, then you are supposed to get restricted in that particular way only. For example, you are using not some sort of workstation, you are using a very basic microcontroller. Then in that microcontroller, what you are supposed to have? You are supposed to have a basic input-output mechanism, because you need to give some input, you need to take some output. Okay, so there is a very basic limited data bus size that is going to accept input, like it is supposed to be 8-bit. So you can send 8-bit in a particular moment, and then you are supposed to get 8-bit as output in a particular moment. So the internal microcontroller is supposed to handle the input-output management. Additionally, it is supposed to have a very limited memory. Why? Because microcontroller size is limited, so its memory is also limited. Earlier, means 10 to 15 years before, the memories was used to be in very MBs, means in 256 MB or 512 MB. But now, as the memory capacities are expanded day by day, and the capacity is going to increase, so we are going to see the microcontrollers having GBs of memory. Even your phone has multiple GB of memory. So in this way, memory management has not become that complex now. Earlier, the memory management task was very complex, because there used to be a very small size of memory, and its handling was a critical task. Now memory size is increasing. We are supposed to have much memory, but the problem is that our program sizes are also getting heavier. So that in this way, it's a kind of trade-off. You can see that programs are getting heavier, memories are also expanding. Input-output management complexity has also increased, because you need multiple input, multiple output. There used to be the scenarios of multiple user operating system. So in this way, all these capabilities are supposed to be subject of particular trade-offs. Now those trade-offs are supposed to get realized in a particular situation depending on your need. So first thing, as here you can see, it is listed as process management. So what do you mean by process? So process is a very basic entity inside computer. Means whenever there is a program in hard disk, we say that it's a program. But when it comes to RAM, means the loader loads it to main memory, then it is called a process. Means whenever there is a program in its actual running state, it is called a process. So program and process are kind of same thing, but when it is running, it is a process. When it is not running, it is just a simple program. It is residing in the hard disk. So in this way, we can differentiate between a process and a program. Now memory management we just discussed. Similarly, the operating system is supposed to handle the input and output depending on the number of users, depending on the size of input, depending on the size of output. Additionally, file management is a very important task. File management used to take care of the internal files, those are present in your memory. Now you might be wondering that if we have already taken care of memory management, then what is the complexity in file management? Means memory management is that how you are supposed to have the memory allocation and the memory deallocation. But in a specific way, we are supposed to have the file management, means how you are going to store the files in memory. It might be in a tree structure, it might be in a linked manner, like you must have learned, I hope, linked list and all. So point is that depending on a particular data structure, the particular file or particular data item or particular specific program is going to get loaded into the memory of a particular device. Now it will depend on a particular data structure, particular algorithms. So those are supposed to be used by operating system in the specific memory management or the file management. Both things are interlinked, but both things are different. Then we move on to the device management. Now, how many devices can connect to a particular system in a single short manner, means at a particular time, how many devices can connect into, and what is the point of synchronization? Because when we say that multiple devices are going to get connected to a particular machine, then there is an issue of communication. Issue of communication in the sense that one device's behavior may impact the behavior of another device. So in this way, if we want to understand, then there is a concept of critical zone in operating system. Critical zone is a kind of program area where two processes at a particular time want to access that particular program in the same moment. So like if you are allowed, consider it means we have not gone into detail in operating system. So I just give a basic intro of this particular situation, that suppose a person has a particular resource. He has a particular resource and it wants to allocate to different people. Now multiple people reach to that guy and they say that please give it to us. So all of them are shouting, all of them are demanding. So obviously the person who is holding the resource is supposed to get panic. Now it is a machine, so obviously it is not going to get panic, but it is going to make mistakes. Mistake in the sense that to whom it has allotted it, whether it has taken it back the resource or not, whether it has allotted it to another process or the party or not. So in this way, the scheduling comes into picture. Means how effectively you are allocating the resources to different devices depending on their needs as well as on priority. So here again, as I discussed, that priority comes into picture. Depending on a specific device's priority also, operating system may decide that this device is supposed to get functionality on a priority basis. So depending on the importance of underlying program, depending on the task that a particular device is performing, you may give a particular kind of priority to that particular kind of device or program. Next, move on to the security management. Security in the sense, like we just discussed, that there might be a scenario that multiple devices are competing for a specific resource. So there might be an issue of security, means mismanagement. They might intrude into the process space of each other. So in that way, they may have some malconfiguration into each other's process space. So just to prevent all these possibilities, you need to specifically provide that it is your space. It is your space. So operating system is supposed to provide a particular kind of dedicated space to each of the process. Now, what is a process? It is a program, as I just mentioned before. So security management is supposed to take care whether a particular process is supposed to gain access to a specific zone or not. Similar way, if you are supposed to have access to a particular zone of memory, then what level of access do you hold? In this way, you need to, means the operating system is supposed to handle the role of access control. So access control, priority management, device handling, scheduling, all these things come together and make the concept that is security management. So when we discuss these things, the overall picture comes at network level. Means inside a network, we have program, we have memory, we have input output, we have file, we have devices, we have security. But all together, when all these things are already discussed, what is the need of network management? So network management, network is an abstract entity. Abstract entity means underlying, means inside a network there are multiple components, there are multiple things, those are going on. But specifically, you are going to talk about a broad entity, that is network. So that broad entity is supposed to have some sort of behavior that is going to impact other devices' behavior. For example, a particular network is out of coverage. Okay, means its functionality is not available to its intended devices. So you will say that availability is not the very good feature of this particular kind of network. So normally in Wi-Fi network, we see this kind of problem, that particular Wi-Fi reach is not available, that particular Wi-Fi is not available, its signals are low or down. So then we say that Wi-Fi networks are not good. So in this way, it is not always the case that the underlying devices are bad or the underlying hardware is not good enough. It might be the case that the management is not proper. It might be the case that the power management is not good inside the network. It might be the case that the interrupt handling is not good inside the network due to some basic issue, the network gone down. So point is that when we say that network management, that at a broad level, you need to consider the different issues those are supposed to be present in a network, and you are supposed to handle all those issues. You are supposed to handle means operating system is supposed to handle all these issues in a specific way so that the overall quality of service to the users is supposed to be increased. Now, when the quality of service is supposed to be increased, then users must be happy. If users are happy, then what else do you need? It means you are going to have financial benefits, because ultimately, whether it's any kind of company, ultimately it is going to have profits. And the sole idea of any business is the win-win situation. Means if you have a win-win situation, if users are also getting good quality and company is also making profit, what else do you need? Means it is this kind of business is always going to prolong. So in this way, these things are different. These are different capabilities of an operating system, and it is supposed to fulfill it in its fullest manner. And additionally, there are some hybrid cases. Under the etc. case, we are going to see some of the hybrid cases where a particular operating system is supposed to manage the file and the memory management at the same time. Similarly, it might have an input, output, and security situation at the same time. So there are always a possibility of hybrid situations, and that's why the particular kind of operating system should be intelligent enough. It should be so good enough by default that it handles such situations in a specific way without disturbing the quality of it. So moving forward, we have discussed the basic need of operating system. Why do we need it? When do we need it? And specifically, what are the capabilities? Now we are going to deal with the functional architectures. Now, when we say the architecture, so as we discussed, that architecture is the set of basic components of any device. So when we say that the architecture of this particular device is not good, what does it mean? It is going to say that that particular device is not going to have good kind of constituent components, so that the overall performance of the device is going to on decline. Means it is supposed to get impacted. So in what way it is going to get impacted, it will depend on the situation, because it might be the situation that multiple users are trying to access that particular device, and the architecture is not robust enough to reply all the users in a specific way, and ultimately only one user is supposed to get access and remaining are kept on waiting. So in this way, means that the remaining users are not going to get happy. But there is another architecture that is supposed to offer the multi-user support. So all the users can get connected to that particular device because of its multi-user support architecture, and all the users are happy in this situation. So when we compare these two situations, then obviously the second user case, means the second situation, in that particular case, users are quite happy, and ultimately the company will be preferred. Means that particular kind of device will get preferred because of its underlying architecture. So architecture is the base. You can say it is architecture is a concept that is a conceptual thing as well as it's a hardware oriented thing. So when we have 32-bit architecture, when we have 64-bit architecture, usually we talk about our phones or the laptops or some other devices, then we talk about in bits, because we know that this particular system is a 32-bit architecture, it's a 64-bit, it's a 120-bit architecture, like that. So higher the architecture size, the more prominent is the performance of that particular device is going to be. Okay, so in this way, architecture means when we say 32-bit architecture means there is supposed to be a 32-bit data bus. 32-bit data bus means it is going to handle 32 bits in a single fraction of time. Okay, so 64 bits are supposed to get handled. So in this way, as many more number of bits you are supposed to get handled at a architecture level means the device is going to be fast. Fast is going to be means less time. Less time means there is a less response time. If there is a less response time, quality of service is good, because your services, like if you are supposed to have video conferencing, if you are supposed to have the teleconferencing, and if you are very addicted to online games, then in that case the response time must be minimal. So if you have the minimum response time, means the quality of service is really good. But when we say the functional architectures, so from an operating system point of view, operating system may have a different sort of architecture depending on its era. Now, earlier we used to have monolithic architecture. Monolithic architecture means there is a differentiation between a user space and a kernel space. Kernel space you consider right now means in future classes we will study in detail, but as it is the first class, so I am going to cover in very basic terms so that your foundation becomes solid. So you just understand that there is a user space where we guys means the users and the application programs do reside, and there is another space, that is kernel space or the operating system space, so where the whole operating system is going to lie. So kernel is the actual part or the actual code or the actual software that is going to deal with your hardware. So here, with support of specific APIs, we are going to handle the communication with kernel, and that kernel is supposed to be part of operating system here. So in the kernel space means the operating system space. So there are two spaces. So in monolithic architecture, the operating system is not present in, means none of the functionality. As we discussed earlier, you can see here, we discussed the multiple capabilities of operating system. So none of the capability is present in user space. All of the operating system capabilities or functionalities are present in the kernel space. So when the whole operating system is present in kernel space only, then that kind of architecture was called monolithic architecture. It is mono. Okay. Then there is a second architecture, that is layered architecture. Now we had the whole soul operating system in kernel space in monolithic architecture, but there was a problem, because as we know that operating system is not a lightweight software. It's a very heavy software, and so many constituent components are present inside it. So when we have multiple components, multiple processes, so many APIs, and they deal with each other in a seamless manner, then we are supposed to have some sort of specific breakage of functionality. Means if you might have studied the computer networks course, then there are two types of layered structure. One is the OSI layer structure, and second is the TCP/IP layer structure. So I'm giving this example because you will understand it in a very crisp manner that what exactly the term layer means here. That when we have the OSI layer structure, we have 8 layers, specifically from application layer to physical layer. So application layer, presentation layer, session layer, transport layer, network layer, data link layer, and physical layer. Okay. So from application layer, user communicates to machine. Now application layer, in application layer, we have multiple softwares. Those softwares, any kind of means Office, Zoom, Word, etc. So all these softwares give us some sort of functionality. So we communicate all the software at application. Then there is a presentation layer that takes care of the presentation of the communication. There is a session layer that takes care of the session management and all that. Session should not get breaked and all. Then we have the transport layer. It ensures that end-to-end connectivity must be present there. So all these things are taken care by the specific layer. So when we have a specific layer, means there is a dedicated functionality in terms of that specific layer. Now in monolithic architecture, we had the whole soul operating system in kernel space. Now there is no clear-cut division of roles and responsibilities. So ultimately, it is difficult from a user's point of view to understand the very basic functionalities of operating system. So then the designers proposed that we should have a layered architecture. So that's why the operating system functionalities got divided, and there came into the picture that is layered architecture. Means individual responsibilities got divided depending on their roles. Then we have the microkernel architectures. Now in this microkernel architecture, some of the functionalities got divided between the kernel space and the user space. So in this way, the size of kernel got reduced. That's why it is called microkernel. So the Linux and Windows XP has this sort of architecture in their old version, and now the latest one is the network and distributed operating system architecture. That is because why we are supposed to get attracted to this sort of operating system, because in present era we see that everything is a part of network. Everything is a part of, specifically if we say then distributed. Because when we say network, then it's a collection or the interconnection of multiple devices. But when we say a distributed network, then all those devices are supposed to be distributed over the physical distances. Means one person is sitting in India, second in Australia, third is America, and all these are part of a single network. So in this way, we are communicating to each other. We are having so lightweighted and fast applications. How all these applications are working. How this effective means seamless communication is possible because of so effective underlying operating system. So that's why the network operating system says that all of you are part of a single network, but that network might be present in a single space, means all of those are present at a particular physical location. But when the physical locations are different of the specific users of that particular system, then simple network operating system is not going to work and you need a distributed operating system. So in this way, these are the different functional architectures. Those are the need of time and device depending on their specific applications that those are running on. Okay. So in this way, we covered these 3-4 basic concepts. Now we are going to talk about some common categories of operating system. Now, common categories, when we say, then operating system is a system software, but there are a wide number of operating systems available. So how many operating systems lie in a specific category, how their roles are different to each other, how they are combined and are supposed to be part of a particular category only. All these things we are going to discuss here. So these are the common categories of operating systems. First is the batch operating system. So batch operating system dates back to means to 50s, 60s. At that particular time, computers were not so fashionable. Means they are supposed to be a kind of, if you say really very distributed kind of device, because one part of device is supposed to read the cards. There used to be the concept of magnetic cards, where on a particular device like CD-like device, you used to put the magnetic points, and you specifically used to pinpoint 10, 10, 10, like this. You have to code your program. Then that particular disk is supposed to be magnetic disk because you are putting the magnetic ink like, and then that particular magnetic tape is supposed to get read by a specific device that is a part of your total system. Okay, means a system consists of multiple distributed parts. Now that particular part is reading. So that is the reading component. Now it is reading the magnetic disk. Then program is read. Now it is ready to get processed. So there is a processing device. So now all the tapes, whatever input is taken from the magnetic disk, the program is written over a particular another disk, and that is supposed to fetch to another processing device. Then processing device is supposed to process that, and now it is supposed to get print. So there is a printing device. So in this way, if you combine these constituent components, then there is a single device, but it is functioning in a separated way. Means there is an input unit, there is a processing unit, there is an output unit. Still, in every system, we have all these parts. But the point is that these things have come under a single means a single processor. You should not say, you should say a single unit. That is the input output unit that is taking care of all these things. There is a processing unit that is taking care of processing. And the communication is so fast that you don't even realize, because the point, even a good amount of computation you are offering to a computer, and if the computer is good enough, then it is giving you results in micro or even picoseconds. So even a fraction of second is large enough to produce that particular result. So point is, in batch processing system, as the process was very slow, because the systems were slow because there were multiple components inside it, and those components are supposed to work in a delayed fashion because of their processing capacity, because of their memory, because of their input output, because manual input output was there. So manual input output will take time, and processing is slow because of processing power, and memory work was very less, because you might have seen a 2 MB disk that was getting loaded onto a truck. If you might have googled. So point is that memory is how we see it today is really a wonder. Means just 30-40 years back, if you see that how memory used to be, then it was a totally different era. So here we see that operating system are supposed to get originated in the form of batch operating system. Means you are not supposed to provide a single task to operating system and then do it. Because if you work in this fashion, then you are never going to complete your task. So because you need to program your whatever activity you want to do on the system, you need to program it in the form of magnetic tape, and then you need to provide it to the system. So first thing that you cannot program big task because you are supposed to program it in a manual way. Then you are supposed to give it to the read part of the particular batch operating system. So here you are just supposed to take care of the input, processing, and output in such a way so that your time could get minimized. So that's why the people proposed the concept that you should provide the batch of magnetic tapes. There is a whole batch of magnetic tapes that is supposed to get fetched into that particular reading device, and then it is supposed to give input to the processing device part, and then it is supposed to get provided to the output device part, and then finally you are going to get the output of that particular program. So batch means you are going to create the batches, but then over the period of time, processing speed of operating systems got improved, processors got improved, and specifically with the change of hardware technology, there is a change of software technology also, and specifically as the software changed, there was a requirement of operating system changes. So we came into the era of multiprocessing operating systems. So multitasking and multiprocessing seems kind of confusing, but it's kind of same concept, but there is a underlying difference. In multiprocessing, we say that multiple processes are running at the same time. So that's why multiple things are getting processed. But there is no time sharing among them. In case of multitasking, there is a concept of time sharing. Means particular concurrency, you might say, in the database, DBMS, in database management system, you might have heard the concept of concurrency. Means nothing is parallel in computers. If you have multiple cores, then only concurrency means a true concurrency is possible. If there is a single core or there is a single processor, then there is no parallelism, there is concurrency. Means one thing is supposed to get processed, then it is supposed to get stopped, then another thing is supposed to get processed, then it is supposed to get stopped. And in this way, it is all the programs and the underlying specific tasks or processes are supposed to get processed. Okay. Then we have the real-time operating system. It's the kind of boss in today's world because we want an operating system that gives us the real-time results. Real-time results means its response time is so low that you don't even realize that you gave it to some machine, because there is no input and output time. Means there is no delay. There is just you gave it to the system and immediately it responded. Or in a system means when we work on a particular kind of system, then we don't even realize if we given to a simple system also, because even a simple system, now we have the i5, i7 processors are running inside the systems. We give what complex task we usually give to a system. Means whatever computation you give them, they will just return it unless you run some machine learning or deep learning code inside those, or you are running some heavy task in terms of image processing or something like that. Then only it is going to take time. Otherwise, those are really quick. But when we have some really complex operations, like we have the space operations, we have some, for example, a missile launch and all, then there is a difference of fraction of second may impact the ultimate goal. Because if there is a minor gap in processing or input output, then ultimately your operating system, so single fraction of delay can impact, means can turn your success totally into a disaster, because in a fraction of second, your missiles will be in a totally different zone. So that's why real-time operating systems are divided into two categories. First is the soft real-time operating system, and second is the hard real-time operating system. So soft real-time operating systems means there is a possibility of some delay. Means if even if your processor is processing your task with a difference of 1 or 2 seconds, 5 or 10 seconds, it's tolerable. it's not going to make much impact on the performance, because ultimately that particular time gap is not concerned from a user's point of view. Okay, but in a hard real-time system, you are supposed to get exactly, your output should be produced exactly at that particular time instant only, whenever it is supposed to be, because that particular, because in today's world, what we have, that when we have an automated machine, when we have an automated car, then one component's input output is supposed to drive the input of another component. So in this way, there is a cascaded architecture. Cascaded architecture means there are multiple components, and the output of each component is driving the input of another component. So in this way, if there is a delay at the output of one component, then obviously the input of second component got delayed. Similar way, the second components also got delayed, then third, and this one millisecond, even the 1 millisecond gap of all these components together can make a difference of 1 hour, because it might depend that on how many constituent subcomponents are present in a single system. So in this way, we can say that ultimately, if you are going to choose a real-time operating system, be very cautious. And there is a Linux version of real-time operating system also, that is RT Linux. Okay, so depending on the choice of application, depending on your need, you will choose a specific type of operating system. Okay, then just in the previous slides, we discussed the role of our distributed operating system. Like we have the network operating system. Similarly, we have the distributed operating system, but the only difference is that distributed operating system are supposed to take care of the synchronization in a very specific way. Now, in distributed operating system, there is another point, that is you need to maintain the same copies of your files at different locations. So you may need to either make a copies of all those files, and then you need to maintain the similarity among all these copies of these files at different locations, or you need to deploy a specific agent or some sort of a daemon inside your system to take care of all these things. Okay, so in case of network operating system, the situation is not that complex, because in network operating system, you are at a single physical location. So even first thing, that delay is very minimal, because devices are close to each other. So even if you copy the files from one location to another, it is not going to take much time. Okay, so in case of distributed operating system, things become challenging, but it is the need of time. So that's why you need to work on that. So in this way, we can say that distributed system is more important, but it is more complex as well. Finally, we come on to the category of mobile operating system. So mobile operating systems are the system software. So those are going to take care of your mobile or the mobile devices. So when we say mobile, it is not just your cell phone, because your cell phone is just a single mobile device. In addition to this, there are multiple other mobile devices who are able to move from one place to another. So in this way, depending on your mobility, like as we discussed in the previous slides, that under the capabilities of operating system, that it is supposed to take care of multiple users. It is supposed to take care of process management. So process management means that the task should be get completed within the intended time. So here, in case of mobile operating system, mobility is a complex factor. Means when you move, then there might be multiple sorts of hazards present in the environment, present in your device, or means your device, I'm saying, because, for example, you have a simple local brand, okay, and you compare it with the iPhone. Then what's the difference? The difference is that the noise tolerance of your device will not be that good like you have in iPhone. So in the similar way, the processing, memory, and all those things are different issue. But some other sort of things that we usually see, that the tolerance to the network or the environment hazards, that is very much important. So how effective, how powerful, how robust your operating system is, so that it can handle the environmental hazards in such a way that the overall user quality of service doesn't get impacted. So in this way, mobile operating system design is a challenging task, because you are supposed to imagine all possible sort of environments. Then you are supposed to take care of different variety of applications, and then how many users are going to get connected to that particular kind of environment. For example, I would like to state the case of Wi-Fi network. Like in the initial development of Wi-Fi networks, there was a huge problem of bandwidth allocation. So bandwidth allocation was an issue, because there was a limited bandwidth in Wi-Fi network, and multiple users are supposed to get connected to it because the strong encryption schemes were not available at that time. So two things. First thing, you have less bandwidth, means you have less resource, but you have more users because there is no control on the access control, and there is no hard and fast encryptions available. Now you will say, sir, encryption dates back to quite old time, means those are the not new concept. So why didn't we implement the encryption, means the heavy encryption algorithms on Wi-Fi devices? So you could have implemented, means even the architecture of those particular devices can adapt the implementation of powerful encryption schemes. But the problem was that if you implement the powerful encryption schemes onto a Wi-Fi device, and in early days, Wi-Fi devices were not so powerful devices. There was supposed to be limited memory. So there was supposed to be limited processing speed. So when you implement powerful encryption schemes, you need more memory. You need more processing speed. Otherwise, ultimately, the response time will get increased. So response time will get increased. Ultimately, the quality of user service will get impacted. So in this way, we can say that wireless networks are a wonder. Obviously, they have changed the whole scenario of networking in today's world. But the point is, this has not happened in just a fraction of time. It means the wireless networks got evolved over the period of time with very hard dedication of scientists and related scientific innovations. Now, in terms of whether you talk in terms of encryption schemes, whether you talk in terms of input-output management, whether you talk in terms of operating system development, whether you talk in terms of processor processing capacity or memory management. So all these things together got developed, and we had this very wonderful feature of mobility. Okay, so and now if you imagine that what would be the condition if you don't have mobility with you right now? So you will get stuck to a specific location. Means again you will come back onto the situation when you have a wired network only and you are supposed to get mounted to a specific desktop. Okay, so here comes the role and its wonderful features of mobile networks. So to handle a mobile network, we need a mobile operating system. Now, again in the others category, we may have a combination of any of these two situations. For example, we have a mobile network and we have a distributed network. Then in that case, you need a mobile distributed operating system. So here, point is that you need to take care of multiple things at the same time. Again, it will depend according to situation. Depending on a particular use case, the particular design of operating system, the particular choice of operating system is going to change. And specifically, there is no means you cannot list all the possibilities. You cannot list all the possibilities, and that's why you cannot list all the possible operating system designs. So here you need to imagine that there are some sorts of basic operating system design categories, and similarly there are multiple possible hybrid operating system design categories. So you need to choose a specific operating system just depending on your need. Okay, so after having this brief introduction of different types of operating systems, we are going to have a look on some of the most popular operating systems that we have in today's time. And these are very common. All of you must be aware. You, I think, know more than me about all these things, because as much gadgets you need and you use that many information and that much information you extract from those particular kind of devices. So just with the use of device, you will extract more information in this way. You can say the hit and trial method that you do. You just make random mistakes over the particular device and you just receive multiple notifications, you receive multiple interrupts, you receive multiple warnings, and in this way you learn that particular device's functionality. But when we study a particular device from an operating system point, then the reality gets different, because from an operating system design point of view, you need to consider the design point of view of a designer, of an architect. So in this way, the Google's Android operating system means it was supposed to be the open source. So in this way, you are supposed to have an architecture that is supposed to have support for large number of users, because on Android devices, as we can see that the Nokia completely got down because it didn't adapt to the changing needs of the time. But the Android operating system got so popular. And a similar way, the other devices who adapted Android operating system became so popular. Samsung became number one company because of this thing only. Now, after that, obviously, Mac are known for their distinguished performance in terms of processing, in terms of everything, whether it is a performance in terms of processing, whether it is performance in terms of camera, in terms of sound, etc. So for their gaming purpose need also people prefer Mac. So here what we can see that depending on a specific choice, your decision is always going to get changed. Now there is always a price factor here because when we compare a normal Mac system and we compare a normal Linux system, then totally opposite situation. Linux got so popular because it was, you don't even need to spend a single penny for that. It is freely available. So in this way, Android was specifically developed for mobile applications, specifically for cellular phones, and Linux was developed for desktop systems and for your workstations. So multiple versions of Linux came into market, and then over the period of time, as it was open source, people and the companies, dedicated companies, developed their own distros. So depending on a specific need, you can choose a multiple user can choose a specific distribution of Linux. There is a light Linux version, also there is a Kali Linux for a specific security purpose. So if you want to go into kind of troubleshooting practices and all those things, then you should go to Kali Linux. There is a Mint version of Linux. So if you want to explore a very soothing kind of very sober Linux environment with a good state-of-the-art functionalities available, most of the packages already pre-installed, that you should use Linux Mint. So in this similar way, we have Fedora. So means depending on your choice, multiple versions are available. Similarly, Microsoft also provided multiple versions of Windows, but Windows popularity is going on decline because it is not open source and you are supposed to pay heavy fee for that particular software. But people are using pirated software, but that is totally another case, because company is also not bothered about the single use, but inside a particular premises or organization, you will never see that the pirated softwares are being used or the company will sue the organization. So in this way, we can say that depending on, again, there is a trade-off of finance, there is a trade-off between your need, as well as there is a trade-off in terms of what are the diverse functionalities that you expect from a particular kind of operating system. Because when you need a very powerful performance, a very powerful operating system that can handle your machine learning, deep learning kind of codes, then Android operating system, those sort of things are not going to get handled. Similar way, if you are not financially capable enough, then you are not supposed to have any other choice but the Linux operating system. So all these things come into picture, and just to put together different options in front of you, and you are supposed to choose any one of those depending on your need. And that is the ideal situation, because no one in this world is capable in every way. Means from a monetary point of view, you might be capable, but from, for example, many people consider Linux operating system as they just see its free aspect. Means they see that it is a free operating system. So it's just not a powerful and a kind of system. But from a file system point of view, if you understand, then Linux is one of the most powerful operating system. It's a file system is very strong. Virus protection is really good. So in this way, it beats Windows in a superior fashion. So just if you have knowledge, if you can improvise the code of operating system, then you can improvise Linux. And in this way, multiple companies have developed their own distributions, and you can also develop your own distribution. So depending on your choice, you are supposed to play with the code of operating systems, and then depending on your knowledge, further enhancements and new modules that you attach with the operating system, new APIs that you add for better communications, and multiple new protocols are proposed over the period of time. So in this way, scientific developments are very minute but very concrete. So even a small contribution makes a huge impact. Even a single software changes the world of communication. After WhatsApp, you can see that how the communication went down at small devices. So here all the people who were used to run on workstations and laptops and all, they just came down onto mobile devices, very small devices. Now, in the similar fashion, multiple new protocols like MQTT, AMQP, COAP, those are getting developed. So constrained application protocols, that is COAP, MQTT, multiple queue telemetry transport, and again, advanced message queuing protocol, AMQP. All these things are for taking care of a very small aspect, that is the smart communication with respect to the efficient queue management and efficient transportation of messages over the wide networks. So when we see, means all these 2-3 protocols that I just named, those are related to the domain of IoT, Internet of Things. So when we talk about that, Internet of Things is supposed to be the future. Some people claim that it is not or never going to get a reality. And some people say that it has already become a reality because mobile devices are communicating to each other. But when we say that Internet of Things, then it is not a communication of powerful devices. It is because the Internet of powerful devices were already present. And what we say that Internet of Things, then it is the Internet of Things. Here, things means the very small and very less efficient or powerful devices. So when you have a sensor in your shoe, when you have a sensor at your heart, so when you have a sensor in your brain, so all these sensors must be able to communicate. At that particular communication level, when you reach in a successful fashion means it should not be the case that one time it is communicating, another time the packet is getting dropped. So communication is not possible. Means a seamless communication when gets happened among this minute devices, then we can say that Internet of Things is going to have become a reality. So I think you must have understood all these concepts that I talked till now. Now we are moving forward, and we are going to discuss some of the prominent books and texts, and the basic introduction of operating system is covered. Hope you have understood that what is an operating system, why do we need it, when is the situation that we need an operating system, and what are the different roles and responsibilities, what are the different functions that an operating system is supposed to perform, what are the different categories of operating systems, and finally, what are the present operating systems that we see in the market. So after discussing all these things, we are going to cover some of the books or the text references. So here are the 3 very prominent books. First is the Galvin. You can find it with the name Galvin. And the name of the book is Operating System Concepts. The second is the William Stallings Operating System, so from Pearson Education. And finally is the Tenenbaum, a well-known author of computer science. Okay, so his other books are also very prominent in computer network, Tenenbaum. So that also you can prefer for your related courses. Okay. So in addition to these, multiple blogs are available if you want to have the idea of state-of-the-art technology, state-of-the-art development, and multiple university websites are available, multiple professors, so their own dedicated sites and pages are available. So resources are endless. What you need, you just need to go through the right place, you need to find the right component, and you just need to start reading. So what I prefer reading a book, because a book gives you a specific gradual introduction of each and every topic. When you study a book, then that gives you the relation, that offers you the gradual change of technology, that offers you that how a particular component is affecting the performance of another component, how a specific chapter is related to another chapter, how that particular chapter is offering a base, a solid foundation for another chapter. So in this way, the whole course becomes a story. So likewise means it is not that you are supposed to read the physical book only. Means if you have online book, with your comfort, you can read it. And if you are not comfortable to study means heavy books, you just go and have the dedicated snippets of those books. Those are also available online at multiple sites, and then you can find the content of your need and as of your interest. Okay. So finally, we are concluding this today's presentation. If you have any questions, then you can unmute yourself and please let me know any doubt if you have.